So I'm here to talk about an e-road bike and who would want one, who doesn't need one. Now there's a gravel version of the Creo, but I've got the road one because I'm interested in road cycling, and that's what I've been doing for much of the last 10 years. So I'm going to talk about whether the Specialized Creo is a good bike, but also when do you kind of get around to thinking it's a good idea to actually go and buy one. So I'm particularly going to talk about what it's like to ride one. What's the experience like? How does it differ from riding a regular road bike? I've done about 400 miles on this bike in the last 3 weeks since I acquired it. So I think I've got enough miles under the wheels now to give some honest feedback on where I think these e-bikes are a good idea and whether they are going to be the future. So let's give the bike a quick once over. What do you get for your money? Well, there we are. It's a beautiful looking bike. Looks very sleek, slightly fattened down tube, but quite discreet. Some of the main features. This is the control panel here. So you can see, I'm going to switch it off. Really easy to use. Switch it on. Shows how much power you've got in the battery. So there are 3 levels. The lowest possible level gives you, at its default, 25% extra wattage. So whatever you put in, it'll add 25% when you need it. More of that in a second. And then you go on to the second level, which I think they call it the Sport, gives you an extra 50%, and the maximum, which I think they call the Turbo, so the 3 lights are lit up there, 3 LEDs are lit up, gives you 100% uplift on your input wattage, up to, I understand, a maximum of 240 watts. That's not something I need to worry about. It's worth being really clear here that the motor cuts out when you're going approximately 15.5, 16 miles an hour. I believe that's due to EU law. So it can't go any faster unless you bypass the motor or you trick the motor. And because this is in warranty, I'm not going to be messing with anything like that for a long time yet. I'm not even sure it's really needed either. So what other features do we have here that's worth noting? You've got the Future Shock on the stem here. So this gives you some suspension when you're going over the potholes, and right where I live there's loads of potholes. The roads are in pretty bad shape. After riding this for about 400 miles, I can say this is absolutely amazing. You can lock it out so it's completely stiff, doesn't move at all, but I prefer it. You can't even tell it's there. It just makes the riding less fatiguing. You have 1142 cassette on the back, and I think that might be a 46 on the front, but you can check the specs yourself when it comes to understanding precisely what kit is on this particular bike. This one's Di2 Ultegra, and it's got the power saddle, which I have on my tarmac, Specialized tarmac bike. Fantastic saddle, really brilliant, really comfortable. And it's got the Roval C38 wheels. Now they're kind of a deep section 38s, of course. I've also got ridden a Specialized Venge, which has the 64s on it. And one of the things about the 64s is that they're fantastic. They make a lot of noise because they're kind of hollow. A lot of noise in the wind, but when there's a crosswind, the front wheel is very, very twitchy, so you've got to be very skilled and experienced to ride it really, really fast. And these, you've got none of that problem whatsoever. So the 38s are, don't get buffeted around in the wind. They're absolutely really, really great. Also, it's worth adding, I think the C must mean ceramic bearings. DT Swiss ceramic bearings on the hubs, and in the hubs, and they are the most smooth wheels I've ever ridden. They're absolutely fantastic. You spin the front wheel, it'll just go on forever. So the wheels are absolutely amazing, and it's a very, very comfortable ride. So overall, it's a fabulous looking bike. Looks like a road bike, rides like a road bike. So what made me think about getting an e-bike in the first instance? Well, a couple of things, kind of personal things, but very much influenced my decision. The first one is I'm 61. I've been back on a road bike for about 8 or 9 years. After dabbling a little bit in mountain biking. And I've found progressively that I prefer obviously riding in the summer when the weather's good, when it's dry. Riding in the deep midwinter is not the most fun I've ever had. So I was finding that I was kind of doing some light training during the winter and then ramping things up come March and April, and then reaching peak fitness around July, August and September before it tailing off again in November. And I found as I got older is that my ambition is to ride faster, but also to try and extend that period of peak fitness, but it's become progressively more difficult. So I've been finding as my fitness has not been as it's kind of been tailing off over the years as I naturally get older, is that it's been more and more difficult for me to ride in groups of where friends are kind of just a bit younger and a little bit stronger and a little bit leaner than I am. So I'm finding that I'm not really enjoying the group riding as much as I normally do until peak fitness time comes around, in which case I can hold myself pretty much hold myself well enough in the 15-16 mile an hour groups over 30-40 miles. But as I said, up until then it's a bit tricky. It's a bit like hard work, too much like hard work in fact. The second issue that's affected my riding is that last year in June 2020 I was knocked off my bike by a driver and hospitalized with multiple injuries. I'm mostly recovered, but there's one thing that's hanging out, and that is the one of my cruciate ligaments, one of the two cruciate ligaments in my right knee is ruptured and cannot be repaired, at least without significant risk. So how that manifested in my riding is that when I'm setting off from a standing start, or I'm on a particularly steep hill and grinding a little bit too much, it puts a lot of pressure on the knee. And so psychologically, or in addition to the slight aching and the pain that I get with it, psychologically I felt that I'm only one bad decision, one bad moment where the other cruciate ligament will snap, and I'll definitely require an operation then, or even a knee replacement. So who knows? So this bike alleviates much of that risk, so it's another reason why I've selected it. So what's it like to ride? Well, when I'm riding along with my friends, one of the things that you notice is how smooth this bicycle runs. It's just incredible, and I've already mentioned the wheels, but the whole thing feels incredibly stable, incredibly smooth. You could literally ride it all day long. There's no twitchiness, jerkiness, anything. It's just incredibly smooth. So that's really good. It feels really, really nice. The second thing is that when you're cruising along, the help from the motor cuts out, as I've already said, around 15.5 to 16 miles an hour. And then you're on your own, and you're on your own with a bike that is about 80% heavier, almost twice as heavy as my tarmac. So it's kind of hard to get going without the pedal assist, of course, without the motor helping. But you can't really, I struggle to kind of keep it going along the flat beyond 18, 19, 20 miles an hour. And as you get some undulations, you're still going too fast for the motor to kick in to give you that little bit of assistance. So I find myself almost kind of dropping off the back a little bit when you've got these extended flat sections, or the low 1%, 2% rises. But then I catch up on the hills. So when the hills come along and it starts to kick up 3, 4, 5% and way above, then I get that little bit of pedal assist once the speed drops to the level where it kicks in. So I'm finding that in the round I'm probably riding on average about 1 to 2 miles an hour faster than I would normally ride on my tarmac, at least at this time of year. Now the range on this thing at its low setting, they reckon it's around 70 miles an hour, about 70 miles, maybe 80 if you're really careful. But I did 68 miles a couple of weeks ago and found that I ran out of juice at 65. It's not a lot of fun riding it back up the hills without the pedal assist because of the weight, of course. So I'd normally be out the saddle on this hill, but I'm cruising up here comfortably at 15 miles an hour. Yeah, I tend to ride on feel. Some years ago, on a 70-mile ride, I bonked about 10-15 miles from home. I had no fuel left in the tank, and it was an unforgettably grim experience. So I tend to ride on feel. And so when I'm going out, when I'm doing 30 miles or 40 miles or 70 miles, I'm always conscious about how much energy I'm using and whether I've got the right nutrition to get me through to get home comfortably in the end. So that means that I often rode predictable routes. I wouldn't take any detours that were uncertain. I'd always try to focus on just making sure that I was playing in safe margins to get home, so that it wasn't a painful experience. With this bike, I can just take any turn I want. And it doesn't matter if it's a hill, as long as there's some battery power left, I can just tour and explore in a way that I've just not been able to do for much of my riding. So that's been a revelation. It also, what it's done, it's inverted my riding experience. Is that when I was riding in a group with friends, I'd often be really comfortable on the flats, looking forward to the flats, but would approach the hills with some trepidation. Didn't really enjoy the hills so much. And sometimes when the hills were big, I used to be thinking about them many miles in advance. But this bike has completely inverted that experience. I'm now less happy riding along the flats because I'm not getting any pedal assist, and my faster friends, or younger, leaner friends, kind of leaving me behind a little bit, but then suddenly I'm looking forward to getting to the hills. So it's completely transformed my riding experience. Incredible. What this bike doesn't give me though is the ability to generate a lot of PRs, a lot of personal records, because when I'm going up the shorter hills, on the shorter sections, I can just ride faster on a lighter bike like most people. But that's fine. You don't buy and ride a bike like this to chase PRs or King of the Mountains. Not that I ever bothered the KOM charts. People have asked, does it feel like you're cheating? Well, not at all, because when you balance out the hills, the assistance you get on the hills with the flats, while you don't get any assistance in the round, it's just a slightly easier ride. And for someone like me, it means that I can keep up with my mates much better than I was able to for longer during the year, for several more months at least. It also makes you want to get out longer, whereas you'd be checking the weather, you'd be checking the wind direction, you'd be thinking about how much energy do I have, how long do I want to ride. You get on this thing, you point and go, and you can kind of leave it to the moment and say, look, I feel good, weather's nice, scenery's good, I'm just going to ride for a bit longer. So you just take another detour, So I can see me doing at least 50% more miles every year on this e-bike than I would on a regular bike. That's a good thing. It's also worth adding that although it makes the hills easier, you still get a workout. It still feels like you've been on a bike ride. So it's a long way from being a moped. So would I recommend this bike, or who would I recommend this bike to? Well, obviously someone like me, someone getting on a bit, someone who finds it a little bit more difficult to sustain the strength for longer during the year, someone who's carrying an injury maybe, and somebody who feels that they're being left behind by their mates on the group ride. I think this is going to extend my years of riding. A friend of mine says that if he doesn't want to try an e-bike, he says, if I put my leg over one of those e-bikes, I'll probably never put my leg over a regular bike ever again. Can't blame him. I think he's right. So who shouldn't get one of these bikes? Well, I can't imagine any road cyclist who's serious or semi-serious in their 30s, 40s, 50s, that they're strong and lean. They're not gonna need something like this. No way. They don't need that assistance. Sure, if they're in the Lake District and the big hills, they would love it. But as a regular bike, it'd be a waste of time for them. So would I recommend the Creo? Well, I've only ever ridden a mountain bike, e-bike version, twice. Never ridden another road bike, so this is my first. But I decided to go Specialized because I bought a couple of bikes from Specialized, and the service, including the after sales service, the real service, I've been really well looked after, so it was a low risk option for me than choosing another brand. I also understand that other brands have got greater wattage, additional wattage that you can get out of the pedal assist than this one. But I think the game when you're riding a road bike is to ride what feels like a road bike, and this really does feel like a road bike. Sure, it's heavier on the flats, but it runs so smoothly it kind of compensates for it to a very large degree. And you can also get, in a separate bottle cage, a range extender, so you can ride up to 100-120 miles as the maximum range, I think. That's a long day out in the saddle, and kind of a lot of fun, really. So yeah, I would really recommend it if you could afford it. I think it's going to be the future. I really do. At least for those of advancing years, like me.